Welcome to Percussion Perspectives, a podcast by Henrik Knabor Larsen and Håkon Steine. Each episode of Percussion Perspectives features one or more musical artists in conversation about musical education, practice, and aesthetic and sociological perspectives.
Hello and welcome back to the 15th episode of the Percussion Perspectives podcast, which features German percussionist Vanessa Porter. Vanessa is one of the most versatile and active percussionists in her generation internationally. Her programs often combine composed works with improvisation, also employing electronics, theatrical performance, and visual media. In the upcoming season, she will perform as a soloist as a part of the European Concert Hall organization, ECHO, in the most renowned European concert halls such as Concertgebouw Amsterdam, Elbphilharmonie in Hamburg, Barbican Centre in London, the Paris Philharmonic, l'Auditorio in Barcelona, and many, many more. She collaborates regularly with renowned composers such as Georges Eperguis, Jennifer Walsh, and many more, and is also regularly performing with other groups such as Ensemble Modern, Ascolta Ensemble, Le Percussions de Strasbourg, in addition to her duo with her sister. In our chat, which took place in February of 2022, we spoke about education and the transition from education to professional life, about the term perfection applied to musical performance, and the world of music competitions, about commissioning new works, about life on the road, and other topics. Vanessa releases 3 albums this year, and you may check them out on the link provided in the information section. And with this, we bring you Vanessa Porter. Okay, so Vanessa Porter. Vanessa, welcome to our little podcast, and thanks for taking the time and for joining us. And we're excited to hear about your insights and all the experiences you had in the last couple of years. You're currently on the roller coaster of the Rising Stars concert program, where you perform all over the world in concert houses, and you design your own solo programs and whatnot. So there's a lot to talk about. Maybe we can start a little bit with your background as a music student, not that many years ago actually. So you have that maybe still fresh in your memory. So what led you into being a percussionist, and take us through that whole time period and what is still relevant for you where you are today when you're performing as a soloist.
All right. So thanks, Håkon, for the invitation to your podcast. What made me want to become a percussionist is actually a really good question, because I do not really have an answer. As my father is a professional percussionist, I came to the instrument as a really young child. And he has a private school for percussion, like directly next to our home. So one part is the living area and the other part is the percussion school. That means for me, there was not this specific moment when I said, I want to be a percussionist, because in my childhood, it was everywhere. So nevertheless, I started with the piano first. Few years later, I played the drums, carried on with marimba and vibraphone and Latin percussion. And I landed in Stuttgart at Hochschule für Musik und Darstellende Kunst, where I did my bachelor and master degree. I went to London and studied at the Royal College of Music, and finally to Musikhochschule in Lübeck to work with Johannes Fischer. So yeah, what is still relevant for me when I perform? I think what has always been important and will forever be important for me is that I feel the music, the improvisation, the pieces on which I'm working. So especially in my solo programs, there's always a kind of private or emotional relation to my life. So yeah, I have the luck to play concerts right now and get the chance to form my own programs with my own concepts and show them to the audience.
Great. A lot has happened in the last 4 years, but maybe before we go into that section, maybe you can just briefly take us through your time as a student, and maybe what is a condensed version of what you still carry with you or like draw on today, like only some years later from the different schools?
When I studied in Stuttgart, which was the main time of my studies, I did a lot of competitions and I did a lot of auditions for scholarships. I think nearly one competition each semester. So that was crazy. And I worked a lot and have thereby got the chance to learn a lot of repertoire, which I probably would not have learned without the pressure of a competition. So that is definitely one of the good things of my time in Stuttgart. But one big focus was on being a perfect, whatever that means, a perfect percussionist. Like play the requested pieces in the correct tempo, with the right notes, with a good technique. Don't forget to look chilled and relaxed while you're playing all these pieces and all this stuff. And I did this like a lot. Really a lot, because this was also the only important thing in my young musician's head. If you are one of the best in terms of playing, people will book you for concerts. And of course, it's not wrong to have a good technique and to learn the craft of your instrument. That is not what I want to say. But in my studies, I often had the feeling that exactly that was one of the most important aspects. And after studying, I realized that the world inside the university is not the same than the world outside of the university, in a good way and in a bad way. So I think in general, the focus in universities are sometimes a bit too much on these competitions and the pressure to be the best in your field. So a few years without university, I just realized that this is not what people want to see. The competition world is not our audience. This is great for the percussion world, to meet other people, young musicians, to meet teachers, to talk with them, to play with them. But it is also very much our bubble in which we live, I think. So also when I am going to concerts or in general when I meet a person, I don't want to see perfection. It is not interesting for me at all. So I want to see a human who makes mistakes, who tells a story, and who is just a normal person with a passion for music and art. So what is actually a good thing that I took away from my studies is that I met a lot of people, learned a lot of pieces, improved my technique as much as I could. And this knowledge, these works, I have them all in a drawer and I can take them out whenever I want. So competitions have never broken me because I'm not an extremely nervous or anxious person in general. But I do know some colleagues for whom it was not so easy. So I think it is dangerous and we should have a look at this competition system and see in what direction it takes some people.
This is a good chance maybe to open up this discussion about competitions, and this is something you mentioned, the word perfection. What is perfect in music? What is, when you say you win or lose, it's reminds of sports and mathematics or something, which is really a different paradigm than the arts. So let's open up the talk for your criticism of the competition mindset. What is wrong with perfect, and what is your alternative proposal for education? For if you're a teacher in some years yourself, how do you educate musicians into the mindset that it's not about only perfect in terms of right notes, right tempo, as you mentioned?
I mean, what is wrong with perfect? What is perfect? I'm sure my perfect is another perfect than your perfect, and again another perfect from another person. So I don't have a plan or the best alternative for music competitions. But as you say, the word competition or perfection alone is creepy and doesn't involve much creativity and art at all. I don't have the best style of a competition in my head, but I'm sure we could change and rethink some things about this old system of competitions. So for example, a few years ago, I did a competition called Creative Award, and I think it was a really good thing. So I had to play half an hour, whatever I want, and show my own music. This must sound very funny for jazz musicians, but for us classical people, it is actually something special when we can show our own music at competitions. So I had to improvise, play my own music, and I was not allowed to play a piece that already existed. And this was exciting and challenging for me back then, because I was used to take a score, to practice more, and to play it. So I did this creative award, and luckily the jury decided that I win the contest. So again, the question, what is win, what is lose, is I don't know. I think we should never win and lose in terms of music and arts, but what is the alternative word in a competition? A competition without prizes is not a competition, right? So the word competition involves winners and losers. Maybe we should only think about the word of this thing. We should exclude competition and take event or anything else. So, but this first prize gave me the confidence to say, okay, I'm not only a music machine which eats a lot of notes and then spits them out a few weeks later. So I think this kind of competition, or let's say event, should be more in the focus, much more. And then it's even hard to say this is better than the other. This is the third prize, and this is the first prize, and this is no prize. Because, of course, it is much more difficult to compare and evaluate different things than when all musicians play exactly the same thing. It's easy to sort out then. With different styles, it's more about taste, more about feelings, and about the overall performance. Like, does this person manage to bring the audience into their own emotional world? So in general, percussionists do not have so many works and repertoire for their instruments. And if you then also always have to play the same pieces, the same tempo, the same dynamics, it gets super fast, super boring. And it doesn't mean that I do always play my own works and only premieres. Definitely not. I do play pieces by composers I like and pieces I know that my audience will like. Pieces they have been played before, of course, I do. But I always try to play and find pieces where I can bring in my own interpretation and don't go on YouTube beforehand to listen to any to other performances.
Cool. I have many follow-up thoughts and questions. One is, what is the best advice you've gotten so far about how to develop your creativity within the framework of a score, of a written score, when it comes to injecting your personality into the interpretation and not being, like you say, learn the music and kind of repeat it back out? Yeah.
I think the best advice is not to go on YouTube, Spotify, or any other channels to see what other musicians have done before. in the best case, you have seen a piece live once and it touched you and you want to play it yourself. And then, of course, you have an impression of the piece, but you may not remember exactly every moment and every movement and playing style of the performer. So, I don't know, take the score, try to understand the composer, to understand and research the time when the piece was written, and then start to learn it. And after that, it is kind of not possible to do exactly the same interpretation that another musician did. But if you go on social media to see which sticking, which melodies, which agogics he or she did, like, okay, that must be the easiest way, so I simply do the same, then it will be exactly the same version and nothing special and nothing you could call your own at all.
So your proposal is kind of historical stylistic research and then kind of micro-detailed research into the score, into the notation.
Yeah, and also choose a composer and see what he or she wrote for other instruments, not only for percussion, just to see the whole thing. And if it is possible to create your own story with experiences you've had, it's fantastic. So sometimes it doesn't have to be the story, an idea that the composer had and wrote in the preface. Quite the opposite. I think if you have your own story, it is much better. For example, Apergis, Le Corps à Corps. I have this piece for many years in my program because I love it, and it is always a little different because I am always a little different. And of course, I'm not the same person I was 4 years ago. So things happen in our lives and shape us and sometimes make us see things with a new perspective. And that's how it is in art too, of course. And also because audience are always different. Sometimes they laugh when I play Apergis and I am super confused. Sometimes they cry or they leave the room. And his story is, to finish this part, that the piece is about a car race. And I am completely not in that topic. So I have my own story and I think everyone should do that. My story is also about a chase or a hunt. Still, especially as a woman, when you're outside and it is dark, I think almost every woman had the situation. You have some noises behind you and you are like, shit, what can I do? There's nobody else here. And yeah, this is maybe a little bit close to a car race, but it is not a car race.
Have you, maybe we can add this in later in the episode. It's not really for this part of the conversation, but since we're talking about Apergis, you have worked with him in person, right? And you also commissioned a piece by him, I think. A new piece for the same instrumentation, speech and tombak. You want to talk about that later or now?
We can talk about it later, as you prefer.
Okay, yeah. Maybe it's more an artistic profile, right? So, yeah. We were actually in the relation to what you learn in the education in terms of being this kind of sports person, to learn to play all the notes. And I was kind of inviting you to criticize the world of competitions a little bit, and possibly also criticize classical music education if you want to discuss that on a more global sense, like the world of pianists and violinists, and then kind of percussion all of a sudden becomes a part of this world, although modern percussion in its beginnings is a very experimental art form, and then it kind of gets drawn into this world where everybody plays rebond as if it's a Beethoven sonata, and you don't have to take the invitation as an open one, and we don't have to include this at all in the edits. But if there's anything criticizing, not in the sense of saying it's shit, but like, can we discuss that in a sort of the good sides and the bad sides kind of talk?
Of course, there are good sides and bad sides. I mean, it's a good thing to have a classical music education, to get the possibility to work with amazing teachers and learn the instrument as good as possible, to get better and better, to feel more comfortable with your instrument, with the situation of an audition, a concert, audience, and with the whole situation of pressure. Because in our profession, we will always have to deal with some kind of pressure and also with fears. I think that's what this profession entails. That's what the situation brings when you decide to perform in front of an audience. So, of course, it is good to deal with it already in the studies. I just think there could be a more artful way of dealing with it. I am very grateful about my time in Stuttgart, London, and Lübeck, and about the possibility to have been in all these competitions, because it was good for me personally, and it worked for me personally. But we are all extremely different humans, and especially we artists are often very sensitive and soft people. So we have one system and one way in education for millions of souls. And for some people, this kind of training and system of our competition culture is not healthy. We are lucky that our education helps to train a lot of professions. I mean, we can become teachers in music schools, elementary schools, universities, be a freelance and do workshops. We can go to the orchestra, we can play solo or ensemble concerts, and we can choose a mix of these all possibilities. So also we train quite easily and do music management or anything else. So what I want to say, we have so many possibilities to find our way, but in the studies, this is not really a topic we talk about, because the highest goal is to get a soloist and play as many concerts as possible in the big halls. And this is, of course, even harder with instruments like piano or violin, I know. But the percussion world is not so far away from this culture. And again, this that is not the life goal of all these people to get a soloist. Even if they are pushed into this role during their studies, some realize after a few semesters that they are not necessarily 100% made for this very hard and crazy life of a freelance soloist, because that's what it is. And then they get lost quickly, and we should really keep an eye on these people as well and show them all the other 100 possibilities he or she could have in our fantastic job. So my point is not to criticize or even abolish the entire classical education, but rather to expand it.
Yeah.
I think the biggest problem of competitions are not the students who go to competitions. I think the biggest problem are the organizers and how to communicate about this competition. You have to send a video, are invited, and then they say, okay, the first round is this piece and the second round is this piece. And in the third round, you sometimes can choose a free choice piece. And you think, cool, I can play whatever I want in this third round, what fits me best. But actually you don't, because you play the pieces they want to hear. You see who is in the jury and you know, okay, this guy loves this music and I can't play a Globocar when this guy is on the jury, because for this guy, Globocar is not percussion, because I can't show how fast I can play and show my super technique with this piece. And then you think not about the music and about your personality and about your concept. You only think about how can I win this competition with this guys in the jury. And I think this is a big problem also, that there are most of the time only percussionists in the jury, which again totally supports that mistakes are forbidden. But our audience is not percussionists, so nobody cares if I play the note with this mallet or with the other one. But our audience cares if there is a person on stage who feels what he or she is doing or not. So, for example, at the Deutsche Musikwettbewerb, I think it is a super good idea that in the third round the jury is mixed and not only percussionists, which opens the mindset of the whole thing completely.
But are competitions good career vehicles for people to get their names out there and to have more concerts and generate activity through that?
I don't know. To be honest, I don't really see that. I mean, as a percussionist, I follow who won this or that competition, but this is often a very short-term success and hype. I don't really see that these winning percussionists are the new superstars in our percussion bubble. And as always, of course, it totally depends on yourself. If you are hardworking, really hardworking, then you will make it. You will achieve your dreams with or without competition. If you don't do this, winning the competition will not help you. Maybe you are a superstar when you have both. I don't know. I don't have it.
Does it generate some kind of attention in the classical world, though, that you are invited into kind of, like a community or a scene that is more related to the classical concert management and that kind of environment that you wouldn't otherwise maybe be invited to? So the Rising Stars invites you into sort of all the loveliest concert houses in Europe. So,
Maybe yes. I've never really experienced that consciously. Sometimes I ask myself whether it's really because I've worked incredibly hard on myself and did this competition stuff that I'm lucky enough to be able to play many concerts today. I didn't win a lot of them, actually. Or whether it was simply also a very big piece of luck and the fact of having been in the right place at the right time. So maybe both. You have to work really hard and you need to have a bit of luck. I mean, you can never look back and see on how it would have been if you had done few things differently. So maybe yes, some doors will open faster when you win one of these big competition. But it doesn't help when you win little competitions, I think. These are good preparations for the big ones. Maybe this is for yourself a good experience and you get stronger and you know how to be mentally fit for the big competitions. But I think at the end of the day, it doesn't help a lot. I can only talk for myself, and I didn't win a lot of competitions actually, and today I'm happy and it works. So I don't know. It's a hard topic, but I do think that if you have a healthy idea of a competition, you do it without problems. But not with the idea to get a superstar. Because things happen as they happen and sometimes quite differently than we imagined. And then we have to deal with the new situation and sort ourselves out again. But that is life. You can't really plan it. And I don't want to say that competitions are a bad thing in general. But you have to be clear in your head that you are still a human and not a machine who goes to a competition.
Right. That's a great advice. Take us through the process right after your studies. Many people experience a bit of a dip or some sort of, it's where the artistic or musical ideals sort of meet the harsh northern winds of the real world. That you go and you exit, you're examined, and you have maybe no location to practice. You have no structure, and so take us through that part of your life where you within 2 or 3 years you had already established a career. So how was that transition for you?
I always tried to start these things in my studies, like many years ago, to look for a rehearsal room and to buy instruments, to have concerts with other people, to get in contact with festival organizers already with 20. And then this just kept growing. And it was not like suddenly I'm in this world and I have no structure and nothing to do. Because I knew when I finish my studies and I have nothing of that, I'm lost.
Do you have some kind of advice there to the listeners in terms of getting your name out there? When you say contacting concert organizers, you send tons of emails. You set aside a special time every day for that, or every week, where you just send X amount of emails and you just wait for the answer, or you get sleepless nights over no answer? How did you do that?
I did that. I'm not doing this now, like sending emails with, "Hey, I'm Vanessa Porter and I'm a percussionist. Please book me for your next festival." But I did it like kind of this once, like many years ago. And I did a portfolio, like a map, really professional, with a graphic designer, and I spent a lot of money into this actually. I sent this map to different addresses, and I think I had like 2 answers, and I was very frustrated. But then I realized, okay, this is not the way to go. And suddenly, when I realized this and tried to put some trust in my work and in my future, festivals which I didn't text asked me to play at their festivals. So from my point of view and from my experience, I would not advise to write to festivals as a private person. That is actually the task of a good management, and the festival makers also know that. So as stupid as it may sound, I would simply advise to stay with yourself. Always try to do a good job and have a lot of confidence and trust in yourself and in everything that comes. And also now, of course, social media is a big thing. So I try to be active every day and do also this email office stuff every day. It is super important for me that the festivals or my management does not have to wait 10 days till they hear something from me. Also because I hate waiting myself a lot. So early mornings are for emails, sometimes nights when it has to. And I think it's just a part of our job, working off emails, taking photos, social media, all these things.
And in terms of social media, which platforms and what stuff is relevant for you? What kind of stuff do you put out there and why?
I do only upload musical content, like no private pictures from vacation or cats that I don't have actually. There's a little difference between Facebook and Instagram, I think. So Instagram appeals more to the younger generation, while Facebook also appeals to the younger, but still a bit more to the older people among us. But I use both channels kind of the same. So. And I try to do a lot of stories. I think this is important, like short excerpts from everyday rehearsals, concerts, encounters. Actually, just showing what I'm working on. And I had a workshop about this social media stuff a few years ago with like advices and statistics, like how many hashtags you should use, how often you should use this or that, and how this whole algorithm moves.
Tell me more. I'm a social media dinosaur. I'm not on any platform. So tell me, how many hashtags?
I hope that no one checks my account now, because I also do not always what I say. But a few things are important, I think. So with the hashtags, you should use 5 or 6 of them. No, not more. Some people are doing like 20 hashtags and think that this will spread a lot, but no, they select. Only 1 or 2 posts per week, so you are current and constant in people's minds, but not annoying anyone with it. Always check which new tools are available and then use them, because the algorithm will then show these videos much more to other users, because of course the new function must be shown. In our case, maybe don't try to upload every handy snapshot, but keep an eye of the quality of the pictures. Take attention to the content of how you phrase things. So yeah, stuff like this. It is a big task of how to use these social media things, and I'm really not professional with this. But I know, or I experience, that some festivals contact me and say that they were on my profile and saw that I'm doing things, and they invite me for their festival. So yes, it's more important than I do sometimes think, and it is a lot of work. It is also not done in a few minutes.
More important than the portfolio in any ways. What about the email response? Is that more important than the portfolio, yet less important than the Instagram?
I think it depends a little bit of the festival, because sometimes you have a super young festival and audience, and sometimes a more conservative audience and organizers of festivals. So they write emails. They do not look on my Instagram account.
Right.
I think they do not know that Instagram exists. So it totally depends on who you talk to and who you books you for a concert.
Silent for a long time. Long. Shh. No one. No one. Not only. Shh, shh. He was silent for a long time. Left dying. So outside. No one. Left dying. So outside. No one. Dying. Adrift after adrift till I. So far after adrift till I. Not only so far after. No one. Distress. Only silent. No one. Distress. Only silent. Silent for a long time. Dying. No one came. Distress only. So far after adrift to die. So far after adrift to die. No one came. Signals, standings. I was, but no one. I was, but no one. I was standing outside myself. Self signals. Some 50 miles.
Okay, let's maybe turn the conversation towards programming and what kind of profiles you're kind of balancing then, because you mentioned now that for some programs you choose a different kind of content, which we do all the time. Of course, we want to entertain people at some level and not scare them away. But in your let's begin with your solo programs, which I think are on many levels quite adventurous. You commissioned some new pieces for your Rising Stars recital, at least the one I saw on YouTube, or I think, or on your website, where you kind of I'm not sure if recommission is a good word, but let's just use that for fun. You recommissioned a piece by Georges Eperguis for tombak and voice. And tell us about that process, how you approached. He's a kind of legendary figure in the contemporary music scene. And how did you approach him? What was the nature of the collaboration? And yeah.
So the first contact was like 4 years ago, and he texted me and said that he saw my Le Corps à Corps on YouTube. Actually, not he, but his assistant. So, and asked if they could put my version on Georges' website, and I was like super happy because, as you said, for me he's a legend and I love all of his music. And 1 year later I had this Echo thing, which means that I have a tour through Europe with my solo program, and I have one choice for a commissioned work, so I can choose one composer. And I didn't know if Eperguis is maybe too big for this program. I did not know what level of composers we are talking about. So I asked, is Georges Eperguis possible? And they were like, well, it is a big name, but let's try. And they asked him. And he said yes. And then The Messenger, a piece for tombak and voice, came out.
And how was the collaboration? Did you get like insight into the compositional process, the possibility to give feedback, or you got the finished score in the mail, or how did that work?
I went to Paris and visited him because at that time I thought we want to talk about the new piece, about ideas, about instruments. I didn't know that he wants to write for tombak and voice. So I went to Paris to his flat and he was like, okay, here's the score. What do you think? And I was super surprised, like, wow, here's the score. We didn't talk about any instruments or about any idea of the piece, but okay, here's the score. So we talked about this first score, and I went back to Stuttgart and visited him another 1 or 2 times in Paris and played the new piece for him. And yeah, we talked about different things like, this is a bit complicated, or this goes in another direction. We should change this move or this sound. And after a few meetings, the final piece was there. But I would say that, of course, the most of the piece came from Georges, like 95%.
Okay, nice. We're into artistic profile and commissions. I wanted to ask you, what are you looking for when you, in a very general sense, when you commission new pieces? What qualities are you looking for in a new piece, and what kind of? I mean, a lot of percussion music has come out of the new music movement, which just means it's based on, motivated by experiments and the driving force of newness, to find new sounds and to find new forms or new technology. And there's a lot of work done in that regard already in the tradition of acoustic sound research. There's a sort of saturation. What do you look for when you commission something in terms of, is newness an important motivation for you, or do you want a certain kind of atmosphere or character to the music, or what things inspire you there?
Good question. I think the most important thing for me is the character. Right now, when I look for composers or interesting pieces, I always look at the people. They have to inspire me. They have to tell a story, to have expression. That's how I choose music and composers, not only because of the instruments. But I like fancy sounds and new playing techniques, new developed sounds or sound mixes. So this is for sure not unimportant for me. But I think it has to be truth in my musical heart, and then it is a match.
Sounds like a good motivation to me. There's one video where you play a recital where you could just start and it goes from one piece to the other, and you have some kind of transitions built in. Are those, there's David Lang and the chorus, and then there's, I think, 2 vibraphone solos at the beginning, at the end. Are those commissions? And did you commission those as a sort of to fill in the gaps of this kind of macro form of the recital?
Whenever I play a solo concert, or even before when I plan it, I want to tell a story. And these transitions are very important for me because I am very bored of concerts where piece after piece is played without context, with clapping in between. It is like an line work in the factory to go through the top hits once. So I don't like that anymore. Especially not in percussion solo concerts. So these transitions in my current program are not gap fillers, but rather part of the whole. So first of all, I write down a story which is in my head or is currently a topic in my life. And when I have this story, I choose the pieces and the music. Sometimes music inspires me for the story. So yeah, it is it's a two-way process. And it is the same in this recital you probably saw on my website. It's called Folie à deux, which means the craziness of 2 people. So people around me have this diagnosis, and it's crazy, it's hard, and it's a mental thing. And I wanted to make a program with this because people outside do not know folie à deux as a illness. So both of the vibraphone pieces are commissioned pieces, And I talked to the composers and said, okay, this is the story and you will compose the last piece of the story. And the program is really hard and maybe a bit stressful for the audience because there are many strong pieces and not so much time to relax during the concert. So the last piece, for example, has to be very peaceful and give the audience a good feeling. Because Verlierde is also a very lovely story. It is not only dark. And so this commissioned pieces came out of this whole story.
Can you talk more about that? How you build a recital program, thinking about dramaturgy and storytelling, and that you kind of start on a very global scale. Do you have assistants there, or do you just dream these things up yourself? Or what kind of competence do you feel is needed? Or did you need to learn some skills that you didn't already have as a musician in order to develop these ideas?
I don't have a special assistant with whom I always check my programs or who helps me to develop them. And of course, I'm not a dramaturge or anything like that. Like when I work with these people, it is always a blessing for me because I can learn a lot from my own programs. I think I do always talk to other people, not only musicians, and talk about my ideas. I think this is the most important thing to create a program, not only to enforce what is in one's own head, but to have a certain vision.
Right. How do you prepare for solo recitals and typically important recitals in a big concert hall venue? Can you tell us about the preparational phase? How do you learn the music? How do you deal with anxiety, stage fright, stress levels, time management, sleep, intake, rest, all these issues?
The work-life balance as a musician, yeah. Self-care is not my special field in which I'm super good in. I mean, I'll be 30 in a few months, so I don't want to sound like a 70 years old talking about his life. But of course, I'm very often tired and exhausted and tend to work a little too much. But for me, it is fine as it is right now. I think I have a really good time management, but it is always a bit too much. So maybe I don't have a good time management. Like if I have various things to do on one day and gets later and later, I'm not like, okay, I should stop and sleep because I have to wake up at 6 the next day. So I will definitely do all of the things at this day. So yeah, I'm not super good in that self-care things. But what helps, I'm very lucky that I'm not this super nervous person before concerts, so I don't have sleepless nights usually. Because I always know that this is just music, it is just a concert, and the world will continue to turn if I make a mistake. So even when I do 2 or 3 or 100 mistakes, our planet is very small when you look at it from above, and it is always important to remember that we should really push some things and fears aside if they are not good for us. Also, when I'm invited to universities or to schools to do a masterclass, I always want to talk about these topics because these are important issues that are often not discussed, like fearness. Fearness, or the worst thing we can do is to be afraid of going on stage. We are doing this for 10, 100 or 1,000 of people, and maybe none of them would go on stage and play a piece or tell a story in front of so many people. So it is already very brave that we are deciding to do that. And I try to talk to young musicians about that and try to bring them down from this mindset and not to take everything too seriously.
Well, I mean, one could potentially understand that the whole mythology connected to maybe performing classical music, which has less of this kind of show business. It's not only about looking great, but it's, I mean, to put it bluntly, very, very difficult to get everything right? And they're like, everyone knows every note, a lot of the time at least. One can easily understand that people get nervous because of this, especially if you play really famous music or well-known music, or yeah. So what I get from you is you kind of try to make it casual, or you think if you see everything from the universal perspective, everything gets rather small and not so important. But what is your trick to have this kind of casual take on that? Like if you play a very famous piece and you know there are thousands of listeners out there, or how do you deal with that idea that nobody cares?
I think there are people who know exactly what it means to be on stage and play a program. They have probably also made mistakes and know that it is part of it and that it is absolutely human. And the other people who complain when a wrong note is played are people who wouldn't have the courage to go on stage and show themselves naked and unfiltered in front of audience. And then I honestly don't give a shit because I don't care about those people. We are not machines. We can have good and bad days, just like any normal worker who for sure is not always doing the same great job on every day. And if a concert day takes place on one of our bad days, perhaps because we have physical complaints or we are busy with other things in our head in private, then we can't always give the same performance. I think this is very important to understand. And yet it is very important to allow bad days and also mistakes, and to accept mistakes and to forgive ourselves mistakes.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, you can support this thinking by not necessarily playing works that you are extremely afraid of. So personally, I rarely play a Bach in a big concert hall. If I know that I arrived there already a bit stressed because something else was going on before, then I don't play it. So I protect myself by deciding what I play. And Bach is, for example, crazy for me. So this is the super simple trick. I think you don't have to play pieces if you don't feel good with it. There are so many other ideas of our repertoire of music, and there's none saying that you have to do that. We are not in the competition anymore. But I mean, if you can play Bach without stress, go for it, because it's wonderful music. But have fun.
Is there a sort of loneliness connected to playing a lot of solo recitals? You're on the road by yourself, you're in a hotel room, there's like nobody there to like, you don't have like a team of psychologists and physiotherapists to take care of your body or something. It's a kind of loneliness of things. But yeah, maybe if there's something to say about that, that's maybe interesting.
I mean, the biggest price you have to pay is that you have less private life and you have less constant life. For example, when you have friends around you who are not musicians, they are free on weekend. They meet on weekend. They have party and brunch and all these funny things. And you are most of the time not in town on weekend. So, yeah, but this is kind of okay for me because I am good when I'm alone. I'm not this person who has to have 100 people around me all the time. I'm super happy when I'm alone, but there is a difference between being alone, which means I am here in my hotel room and nobody else is here, and like solitude, which means you feel alone. So to be alone and to feel alone, and to be alone is not a problem for me, but sometimes, of course, I do also feel alone because you are in a hotel in the nowhere, because I'm not only playing in Berlin, Cologne and London in the cool cities. I do also play in like 1,000 people cities or villages somewhere in the off. And these are the moments when you maybe sometimes think, do I really want to do this till I'm 60, or are there any other things in my life? So yeah, this is the price, of course. But again, I love this so much what I'm doing, and I love the music, and I also love to meet all these different people. So For me, personally, it is better to have 5 close friends than to have 100 semi-close friends. And yeah, it's a good concept for me right now.
What are your go-to anti-loneliness techniques when you are in the village alone, in terms of maybe extra musical things, reading or meditating or jogging or whatever it is?
That's also a bit of a deciding factor in which phase I'm in at that moment. So most of the time it is only our head who says you are alone, but actually you are not, because you have friends and you have family and everything is fine. But sometimes you have these phases. So what I do is reading. So there are months in which I only read a lot of books and do nothing else. And then, of course, I ring my friends. They are spread all over Germany and Europe, and we don't see each other often, which is why we talk on the phone a lot. Sometimes only 10 minutes, and then everything is fine again. Sometimes you just need a familiar voice to tell you that everything is okay and you are not alone. But I don't have that one thing that I always do when I feel alone. So sometimes it is a glass of wine, and sometimes it is Netflix or cooking or a bottle of wine.
Right. In terms of next steps for you, or kind of motivations, where do you see the next period in your life taking you? What is the sort of way forward for you in terms of developing more programs, more type of ensembles, or more repertoire? What do you want to kind of bring out to the world, into the world, that which has your signature on it, right? And what sort of quality is your quality?
I have no idea where I will be in 2, 3, 4 years. The plan is to develop my own programs more and more with things I'm interested in. Programs with cello, with dance are topics right now. Always to rethink what is important for me. What would I like to do next? Which step is the next? Or is it better to stop here for a little while? So I think I never want to stop questioning myself, and just keep doing programs, meet interesting people, and hope that people don't get tired of me and my music. And if it is like that, I will find another way to have a happy life, I think.
Yeah, you can only pray.
I'm not sure if this will help, but maybe.
Yeah. Okay, great. In terms of, you say you want to develop more the chamber format, and so you really feel you belong in the chamber format. You don't think about going into orchestras, playing big recitals with orchestras as a soloist, or going into multimedia, or going into... So you want to kind of keep developing the solo, duo, dance chamber format.
Yeah. Also, solo is for me not always solo. Like Folie à deux is my solo program because I play solo pieces, but I also combine this with electronics. So there's always an electronic guy next to me who completes the program, because only a percussion solo concert is also super boring for me.
Yeah. Talk about that. I love to talk about that with you. The problems of percussion solo or percussion music in general, and sort of where does it really belong in your life in terms of your own private listening? Do you ever listen to like percussion music in your car, or when you go from A to B?
No.
Exactly, and why? And but we still keep investing so much time of our lives into this kind of weird genre. Yeah, tell me about why you don't like percussion music.
Because percussion music is also very visual for me, and I personally like to look at people when they make music, or in general, I just like to look at people. I hope this doesn't sound too creepy. And of course, you can't do that with an audio recording. And of course, it is also very much due to the repertoire. I can listen to some pieces twice or more. I can also read books twice. But in our repertoire, I have become really tired of listening to the well-known works, and there are really not many, and so often the same. Yeah, and I think I also don't like how percussion music is in the minds of many people. So also composers who choose like 200 instruments for a single piece, and you are like, hey, I'm a percussionist, I'm not Jesus, and I can get you 100 different sounds out of this one instrument. I don't need 100 different instruments for that, and this is much more interesting and than to put 100 drums on the stage. So yeah, this is the usual percussion concert evening. A lot of instruments, a lot of tempo, a lot of action, little rest. And I think that is just, that I just do not like this attitude very much.
So you're not so much inspired by the kind of virtuosic spectacle, but more about the personal thing and the psychology of the artist on stage.
Yeah, I think so. So, I mean, that contradicts what I'm saying now, that I'm going to release 3 albums this year. And I put my music on an audio disc, but I still try to choose music that tells a story and is interesting for people, not just play a piece and record it to have it like in the Vita.
Maybe this is the final question because we have now 1 hour. I talked to Christian Dierstein about this. His kind of, what is his take on an album, on the whole idea of making an album in 2021? We hardly have CDs anymore. The idea of a physical album that you kind of listen to from beginning to end. With the streaming thing, this whole concept of putting on a record and listening from beginning to end kind of exploded, and people listen much more in fragments. So what is your feeling when you say you're going to make 3 albums next year? Do you have faith in the album format still? And what do you feel is the importance of making albums?
I think making an album right now, is actually super crazy because it costs a lot of money and almost no one still has a CD player in the car or at home. In general, the whole world doesn't really care about CDs. But I think it is still very important to hold something physically in your hand and not just to be able to play music random through a play button. So it's exactly the same with Spotify, like with the zufällige Wiedergabe, is totally ignored that the artist has once thought about an order of songs or about a concept. It is simply anonym and random and totally unartistic. So also the prices Spotify pays artists are virtually zero, so really nothing, unless you are a superstar. But I'm not. So for me, to make the story short, it's nice to record my music on an album without thinking a lot about if this is clever or not. I don't know. But maybe to advertise a little bit, on June 3rd, my latest album, Psychosound Color, was released. And here I set 10 paintings of my grandfather to music with different objects, instruments, and synthesizers. So if anyone wants to check it out, you can find it on my website. And in August, my solo album, Folie à deux, will be released, what we already talked about. And at the end of the year, we will release a new duo album with my sister Jessica, who is also a percussionist. So, many CDs this year.